Okay, guys, it's Monday. You know what that means. It's time for Metagame Monday. Before we get into the thick of things, I have a few messages for you guys. So, obviously, I'm trying to build a big community over on Metafy. I'm loving where I'm at. I would love to add more barons. So, yeah, I guess listen up if maybe this following stuff is something for you. So, today, by the time of this recording, I will be opening signups for my first vintage Eco Cup. Andy Marketon, Eternal Weekend Champion. I'm actually level 1, Premier Vintage Content Creator. Agreed to play in the tournament, so it'll be those two guys playing against 14 of my members. You guys will be playing for a beautiful foil, gold-signed, artist-proof Sword Supply shares and 40 treasure chests. So that if that's anything for you, consider joining the Rainstone Baron tier and participate in that one. Another thing that I've done is I want to add more guest content. So I got Eternal Weekend Champion, Breakfast Specialist, all-around good guy, as you can see in this picture, Larson, to write an extensive primer. This is by far the biggest piece of content I've ever uploaded. And Larson was very, very nice to agree to publish with me. That one has been incredibly popular. That is, of course, free with a Brainstorm Baron subscription, or you can buy this individually. For this week, when it comes to guest content, I'm not gonna. Oh, I guess I showed the name. I was about to say you should guess the name, but I guess you already guessed it with this results page. Oops All Spells Maestro Faulted Form has been so generous to donate a guide for my Metafy, so look out for that one during the week. Last thing, all of this is brought to you by this guy. This guy has been winning tournaments since 2002, and that's everything my Metafy is about. My Metafy is about hiring the chances that you guys will win tournaments just like these guys, right? So what do these guys have in common? Winning trophies, paintings, winning trophies, winning trophies. Unfortunately for Larson, no painting that year. Same when it comes to Faulted Form, winning trophies. And I guess I won a trophy as well back in 2002 when I played the Pokemon TCG, starting my Magic journey off. So yeah, that's going to be it for the ad part. Thanks for sticking with me. Let's get into the stuff we're here for. So this weekend had a single challenge canceled mid-event by technical issues. So we only have 32 decks here. I could have gone for like top 10 of each tournament, I guess, but not this time. Only the actual top 8 decks will be talked about. So the first column here, we have a couple of 5 copies here. We have Oops All Spells, basically taking over where Reanimator left when it comes to pressuring the graveyard. The thing is, with Oops All Spells, you kind of have to win the die roll or have a Force of Will for your Graveyard Hate main deck to even matter. So I think that's kind of subconsciously what led players to cutting, the main deck Nile Spell Bombs, move away from some Endurance decks or Crop Rotation Bajuka Bog decks, etc. And Oops is kind of reaping the rewards of that by putting 5 out of the 32 top 8 slots, placing 5 of them. So yeah, this deck is just, we have to realize this deck is not consistent, but this deck will punish any, oh, I have a Ponder and a land and a Plow. I guess I'll keep this. Then you will just lose turn 1, and then there's a lot of pressure on winning 2 sideboarded games. So either you have to heavily compensate in the sideboard, or you have to play a deck with more game against Oops than simply just 4 Force of Wills and hope for the best. The policeman of the format is Dimir Tempo / Midrange. I think that deck is awesome to have as a best deck in the format. It turns out that it's very balanced. Used to be just clearly the best thing to be doing when Psychic Frog was legal, when it at least came to the Dimir color pair. But now you actually have to work for it. You have to build your deck a bit more grindy. You have your Tamios, your Kaitos. You have to think about your removal suite into the expected metagame, the current, the eternal question of shoot the sheriff, go for the throat, how many brazen borrowers, stuff like that. Dismember, I guess, is in that mix as well. So I really like this deck on top of the metagame as a fair deck that isn't sucking all life out of the opposition. So this deck still has a hard time covering the whole format, but it does the best job of being the policeman of the format, I guess you can call it. Up the Beanstalk here represents these new Sultai decks featuring Rakshas's Bargain, I believe is the name. So that is effectively a draw 2 that has some graveyard synergy, so you can play your Uros, your Fueling, your Murktide, your Murderous Cuts, etc. And its mana value is always 6, so that's why, you want to pair it with Up the Beanstalk. That makes a lot of sense. In practice, this leads to a deck with a bunch of cantrips, bunch of beanstalks, bunch of bargains. So that's a lot of mana that you spent not interacting with the board. So I will argue this deck sure will grind out most decks, but it's also something you can attack early. Due to the Sultai mana base, it's also going to be a lot worse. That means Wasteland is better against you. That means Blood Moon is better against you. That means Rise of Progress is better against you. So there's, Waste, Loam Lock. So there's a lot of room to beat this deck. With that being said, you can support Carpet of Flowers. You can support some basics. It's not it's not terrible. It's just to say that this deck is highly exploitable. But I'm excited to see it back. I always love these kind of strategies. I should probably try and play it one of these days. So speaking about Blood Moon here, is a question that I've had on this series is, so where did the Ancient Tomb players go once, Eldrazi is not in the picture, at least for the foreseeable future? I still believe you can build Eldrazi without the green splash, but for now, it's not really putting up any results. I mean, I play against it every now and then, but it seems to be up in the air where the brew or the final build will land. Blood Moon is a great way to punish stuff like Up the Beanstalk, but if you look around here, it doesn't do a whole lot against Oops. Well, then you already have to turn and everything should be at least better. It's not that great against Dimir with basics, but you can catch somebody off guard with the Troll Band. That's actually something we should talk a little bit about. Troll of Khazad-dûm being illegal now makes it so that people have less access to their swamp, which is good for Blood Moon in general. So pretty excited to see Blood Moon here. I think that deck is a good check on the format to make sure that a lot of decks are kept in check when it comes to being greedy, etc. Next up, we have 3 copies of Aetherile here, which represent these Death and Taxes style decks. So some of them are built around, Philia Overlord, some is like Ketramos, some is something even different, some is Yorion. But having these guys making it this far in 3 copies, and when I look across the meta here, I see very little show and tell, so that's a big reason. I've always talked about that if you have to play longer games against stuff like, Tempo and Delver, Death and Taxes is a good choice. If you have to play against controlling decks, it's a good choice. If you have to bypass Blood Moon, it's a good choice to play a 2-color rock-solid mana base with Aetherile in it. So maybe across the board, it just makes a lot of sense. I would be shocked if let's say we had 3 copies of Death and Taxes alongside, 5 copies of Show and Tell strategies. That would just be, it's kind of either or for me, but let's see if that's true in the weeks moving forward. Decks like this usually thrive when the format slows down a bit. Let's say there's just a lot of, Oops, Doomsday, Fast Reanimator, Show and Tell. At that point, there's too much pressure on the white deck's opening hands to reliably do well. So let's keep an eye on that. I feel like as long as we have a big chunk of slow decks here between Beanstalk and Vial, then that's a sign that the format has slowed down a significant amount. So up next, we have a couple of Delver decks. I believe it was in the same hands of the same pilot, so always nice to have a back-to-back debate. Temur Delver, still a solid choice. When you look across the field, you will get a bit out-muscled here by the slightly bigger Daze deck. You might also get outgrinded by the Beanstalk deck and the Death and Taxes deck. So Delver is, as always, looking to prey on these Ancient Tomb decks that are dealing themselves damage over and over, so you can get mileage out of your 1-drop attackers and Lightning Bolt. And it's preying on, assorted combo decks, right? So if there's a lot of Show and Tell, Delver is probably awesome. So in this case, they were both kind of down. 2 copies is not a lot, but you could group them over here and say, oh, these are 7 Days decks, and that wouldn't be crazy. A couple of Painter decks, both of the red variant, so there is a chance that these Painter decks are going to red because Pyroblast is awesome. It's great against the main policeman of the format. It's great against Delver. It's great against Beanstalk. Great against any Nadu strategy, any Show and Tell strategy, any Days matchup. So Pretty cool to see Red Painter do well in the hands of two different pilots. Up next, we have the, I don't know what you want to call it. Like when people forget some clothes or whatever, then you make a box full of random clothes that were forgotten. But this is like the mixed bag of one of finishes. So Fast Reanimator is a deck that is always dangerous. My main concern is that it's operating on the same axis as Oops. So in theory, you can just hit those together and you will have like Fast Graveyard. But obviously, it's going to keep winning the game early and often. It's a bit more resilient than Oops, and it's a bit less explosive than Oops. So, give and take. Oftentimes, this deck can, discard and then go for it, where Oops is like close your eyes and go for it, on average anyway. One copy of Bant Nadu. This deck did very well in the showcase right after the bans in the hands of some very, very capable pilots, but it's kind of had a hard time converting after that fact. I think that deck's just, as I've said from the beginning. And of course, you can change your mind about stuff. So it's not to, like double down or whatever. It's mainly just that it's been my thought for a while that this deck was totally fine for Legacy. It's going to be a role player, then it's going to have a good week, then it's going to be invisible, then it's going to have a good week, right? So cool deck to have around, in my opinion. There's a lot of cool play around the Zenith toolbox and how you can attack that deck to neuter the combo part and play a fair game against it, or the other way around, force it to be a combo deck and out muscle it on the fair axis. One copy of Sneak and Show, JPA. Whenever he finds the time to play, he will usually make a result for my video here. So Sneak and Show, great call. Stock Up is amazing. The new Cavern of Souls for spells is going to be relevant in that deck, so decks will need to play more Ashen Riders, I believe, if that is a trend that keeps up. Then there's a cool little mono black deck here trying to solve the metagame by putting Leylines in the deck. So if we look across the field here, Leyline is going to be good against the fast graveyard decks, obviously. Then it's going to be serviceable against some decks, like some Murktide decks out of Beanstalk and Delver. Maybe a little bit against Painter. So that's kind of a metagame deck that it needs these fast graveyard decks to be good in order to be viable, right? Then we had a cool green-white Cats energy deck that I'm not going to go too much into, but just amazing that player made to bait. Then we had a Dreadnought deck. Dreadnought is a bit in and out of the metagame, so in my opinion, I love Dreadnought when it can reliably survive. So that means if there's a ton of pushes and plows getting played, not too high on the card. If there's a lot of lightning bolts, Mono Red Prison type decks getting played, then I'm a lot higher on the card. So I might get back to that, to Dreadnoughting people later on. And then to round off, there is a nice looking Grixis Tempo deck, which is basically the blue-black deck with a red splash. Red splash being Molten Collapse, Pyroblast, and Meltdown, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong there. That was just pretty cool to see. We've had this conversation before when it came to Esper versus Dimir, and you get better removal, yes, but you also get worse mana base, so you get Wastelanded, Blood Moon more often, etc. So a trade-off, but I do love Molten Collapse. I think that card is just, if you can kill a Murktide Regent and a Chalice of the Void with the same card, that's always going to be interesting to me. So pretty diverse metagame here. To sum it up, Fast Graveyard is definitely a thing. The Daze decks are primarily going to be Bowmaster decks that are going to go a bit slower, but also going to be more resilient. You don't want to get Blood Mooned, and you have to be aware that a good chunk of the metagame between Beanstalk and Death and Taxes can grind you out, so you either have to try and match their grind potential or win before that kind of kicks in. And then, some niche decks looming. So that's the big ones. I think that's more or less going to be it for this episode. I was pretty excited to see a metagame with an established controlling deck. People seem to have asked for that for a while, and it looks like we at least have the potential for something that can have some staying power. So yeah, pretty excited for that one. I hope you guys are as well. I'm going to be playing much more Legacy in the coming week. Look out for the Faulted Form Oops All Spells guide. If nothing, in order to beat the deck, it's going to be a nice read, right? You don't have to play the deck. Oftentimes, you want to do your research on the opposition as well. So look out for that one. Remember to sign up for my Vintage Eco Cup. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.